Hi, so in all the Blender 3.4 hidden features videos that I've done so far, I think this is probably the most hidden feature of all so far, and it's drivers. And you'd have to look through the documentation to see it. It really doesn't jump out at you, but it's there in the menus, and you can do some pretty neat things with it. And what's a driver? Well, a driver is just one thing that makes another thing happen. So here I'm going to do an example with geometry nodes, and let me turn on my screencast keys so you can see what I'm doing. And all I'm going to do is add this set position node, and the offset I'm going to say let's put in a value, and this value I'm going to use a driver for it. So if I do hashtag frame, not at mark, hashtag frame, and then divide it by some value, that's going to take each frame and use that as an input. And so what it's doing, the offset, it's applying this to X, Y, and Z simultaneously. So if I play the video, it's going to go in the positive X, Y, and Z plane. Now if I change it so that it's a trigonometric function, it's going to be oscillating between 1 and -1. So here, if I take it and just apply it with a combine XYZ to X and leave the others at 0, and then I run it, it's just going to oscillate there in the x-axis. And then if I copy it and put it in Y and then type hashtag frame divided by 20, and let's make this a sine function, or cosine function, I mean. Now you can see it's going to oscillate on both axes, and my cosine is actually, if I divide by 10, then it's a perfect kind of circular trajectory around the origin. So there you have it. So that's one way you can use drivers, and this is probably the simplest driver there is. And you've probably seen that in other videos where you do the hashtag frame and use that in like your shader or a displacement. It's another example, and I showed this in another video, but in cycles you have the option to use nodes for a light. So if I take, say, the color or the strength and put that into a noise, or have a noise go into that, and then I can put a color ramp to make it a little more pronounced, that noise is affecting the color of the light. So if I change it to a 4D noise, and that fourth dimension is time, then I can put a value in there and use this hashtag frame trick to get some change in the lighting. And this might be, say, some trees overhead, or maybe some clouds going over the scene. So you can get some interesting lighting effects that way as well. So now let's see some little more advanced use of drivers. And here we're going to drive the position of one object by the position of other objects. So here, if I add a Suzanne head, so let me add a monkey head, and then let me copy that a couple of times. And then what I'm going to do is click on the big monkey head, I kind of shrank down the other two, or enlarged this one. And so let me make the monkey heads a little different size so we know that the small ones are the controls and the large are the large monkey head is the one that we're driving. So you just click on it, and I want to change the Z location. So I go to Add Driver. And if you want to get back to it, you just click on it again and go to Edit Driver. And here I'm going to say, okay, let's say make some calculation on an averaged value. So I have an input variable, and then the object, I'm going to pick one of these small Suzannes. And then I'm going to pick the Z location as what I want to use as that variable. And then I'll click on the other, I'll click on this Add Input, and then I'll choose the other monkey head as the other variable. So because it's an averaged value, it's going to take an average of that Z location of each of these objects. And here I want to make it a transform. That one's at 0, the other one's at 2, so the big monkey head's at 1. And then let's edit it again and change this averaged value to sum. So right now, one's at 0, and Z, if I move that up to 1, and the other's at 2, then the big monkey head's at 3. And that's pretty straightforward, I think. You can go to, let's skip scripted for now, go to the minimum. So it's going to be the minimum of those two, which is 1 right now. Or I can change it to maximum. And of course that goes to the maximum of those two, which is 2. Now the scripted expression, we can go in there and we can write an equation based on these two monkey heads, the small ones. And so you can see one monkey head, the variable is VAR, and then the other monkey head, the variable is VAR underscore 001. And so I can write an equation here where it's 2 times VAR plus 3 times VAR underscore 001. And that's going to be the equation that it uses. It's going to be twice of one of the monkey heads and then 3 times the Z position of the other monkey head. So this one's at 1, and this one's at 2, so that's at 7. So the first one that I clicked on is multiplied by 3, so that's 3. And then the second monkey head that I clicked on is multiplied by 2, so that's 4, so that makes 7. So you can write equations like this. Now another thing you can use this, and I'm just doing this to show you some of the variety of things you can use with these. If you click on, there's a lot of fields that can be affected by this. And here, let me put a light in there, and then I want to show you that if you go to the shader editor and you put in a mix node, and it's going to be a mix between pure black and pure white, and then you add a driver for these monkey heads. And let me adjust the driver a little bit. I'm going to write an expression that it's going to be monkey head 1 divided by 10, and then monkey head 2 divided by 10 as well, whatever those Z positions are. And that's going to be the color of the big monkey head. So let me get rid of the driver that's on the Z location for the big monkey head, and then we can just see the color change as I raise that monkey head. So if I move it to 10, it's pure black. If I move it to 5, it's halfway in between. And if I move it to 0, then it's pure white. And then if you're above or below 0 or 1, then it's just going to hold that max value. So that's another trick you can do. And there's a lot of fields that you can affect with these drivers, so you can go in and play around with those. Now I'm going to add a curve, and this is with the curves extra objects, and there I have another video where I go into here. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to build a crude clock, and I have a big hand, and then I'm going to take that same object and make it a small hand, and then I'm going to add a circle, fill it, and then use that as the back. So let me adjust it here so that the arrow is on top. There we go. So I'll modify this arrow object a little bit to make it look like a long hand. So let's shrink it down and then move it over in the x-axis, and then take these two nodes on the left and drag them over. And then if I go back to object mode, I'll set the origin to the cursor location. So there's a couple ways I could limit the rotation. I can go and add an object constraint and click these, and it's going to limit the rotation in X and Y, and then when I rotate it, it's just rotating in Z. Now, the easier way is just to go here and click these lock rotation options here in the side panel, and it does the same thing. So I'm going to take this big arrow and make a copy of it, and then let's shrink it down a little bit. Just move it there, and that's going to be the big hand. I mean the hour hand, the small one. So I want to spin it around. So I'm going to lock the rotation on both of the, lock the location on both of these and limit the rotations to just in Z. And then I'm going to add a driver here for the big hand. And it's a easy scripted expression to come up with. The other arrow, the small hand, is the one that's the variable for the big hand. And all it is I'm going to multiply it by 12. Right now, if I spin it around, you can see that the minute hand is going around 12 times each time the hour hand goes 1/12 of the way around. So from 0 to 1. Let me rotate this whole scene so it looks a little more like we're starting with both hands at 12 o'clock. And then as I rotate it around, you can see that the minute hand is spinning around as it should. So it starts here at noon, and then goes around once, and that's 1 o'clock, goes around 2 o'clock, and then there we go, 3 o'clock. So that's an easy way. That's an easy way to kind of understand what drivers do as well. So another thing you can do, I'm just showing a couple different varieties, and you've probably seen this in some other videos, is using the gear that's in the mesh extra objects. And if you want to know more about that, you can go to my video on the mesh extra objects. And so I'm going to take a gear, make a copy of it, rotate it a little bit, and then I'm going to set up a driver for one of them and use the other Z rotation. So I'm going to lock them both so they don't move position, and then limit the rotations to just the Z direction, and then add a driver for this. And it's going to be, I'm going to add the first gear as the variable, and then change this to Z rotation. And then here when I rotate it, oh, they're both rotating. What I need to do on the second gear is change the origin. It's going to rotate about the origin. And if I set it to geometry or the center of mass, either should put it pretty much in the middle. And now if I rotate it, oh, you see it's just copying the rotation. What I really need to do is change this equation so that it's minus that rotation, so it moves the opposite direction. And there you go. You have a couple of gears rotating around. And if you want to have gears of different sizes and different teeth, there are some simple equations you can use to get those rotations correct between those different sized gears with different numbers of teeth. So here's another one. Let me add a cube. And I'm going to add subdivision surface. Let me give it a couple of subdivisions, and then I want to kind of subdivide the base mesh so that it kind of looks like a rounded cube. So let's go that many subdivisions. We'll go back here, and then let's shade it smooth. And then if I do a simple deform, I'll add another subdivision surface after and lower the first one. So let me change this simple deform to bend, and then you see it's kind of bending around the origin. So what I need to do, if I change it to Z or Y, you can see it bends in those axes. And I can adjust the angle that it bends. And then what I need to do is go into here. If I want to, what I wanted to do is kind of bend, kind of like a slinky. It's flat on the floor. So let me select all these surfaces. If I hit 3, I can change the selection to just surfaces. And then I'll select all of them, and then do a Shift Z, and do cursor to selected, and then go back to object mode, and then over here change the origin to the 3D cursor, and now you can see it bends around that point. Where the origin is like the non-moving, the non-rotating plane of that twist. So now I'm adding a monkey head. And what I'm going to do is use this monkey head as the driver for this bending. And you've probably figured out how I'm going to do that. I add a driver, choose Suzanne as the variable. You've probably figured out how I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to a scripted expression, use Suzanne as the object, and then use Y location, and let me rotate Suzanne around. And let me move Suzanne around so you can see that as I move it in Y, it's changing that bending. So I'll move it around 90 and then rotate my scene around, and as I move it, you can see it's affecting that bending. Now, say I want to add another simple deform and use one of the other effects in there, and here I'm going to make it twist to affect that twist. So as I go up, you can see it twists. As I go down, it untwists, and then it twists the other way if I continue to go down. And then also at the same time, as I'm moving left and right, it is twisting. So there you have it. There's a number of things you can do with drivers. And if you like this video, go ahead, like and subscribe. I really appreciate those who have subscribed so far. I didn't really expect anybody to subscribe. I didn't even think people would see these videos, but apparently some small amount of people are seeing them and liking them, so maybe I'll do a few more. All right, well, thanks. Bye.